Colin Tickle.
I'll try and listen. Cool. I'm against the timer, so thanks for not clapping too loudly. So yeah, my name's Colin Tickle. I'm the head of tech at SQLI, previously Redbox Digital. And my talk is about Docker. So what's my talk about? It's about a development stack that I've been building for probably 7 years. Used it in various places I've worked at. We use it extensively at SQLI. It's been optimized and has helper scripts for Magento, which is clearly why we're here. But more importantly than that, it's also a tool for learning, collaboration, and experimentation. So for instance, a few months ago, I heard about KeyDB, which is a multi-threaded version of Redis. So I thought, does it work? I could switch it out, try it in about 5 minutes. So it's useful for that kind of thing as well. Scary times. I didn't get the memo that this was a bad idea, so let's try it. So I'm just going to do a really quick thing. So essentially, everything has its own project script. You define which containers, which version of PHP, etc. And I'll go through that more later. And the first thing I need to do is check if Docker is running, because this is all Docker-based. And all the containers are exited. And I can do Docker start. So that will start all the containers that are required by this demo. There's more here because I want to demo more things if I get time on this little timer. And then after that, if I quickly run the project script again, I've gone for the self-documented version of things. So there is a README with loads of README text in there. But equally, if you run most scripts in this stack, they will tell you what they do. So it tells you that it can initialize a script, a project, it can download the files, install a database, install configuration, and essentially give you a full running project in about 5 minutes from scratch, I hope. And on top of that, it gives you all these extra things. So it can access the PHP container. As we've seen, it can do Docker status, Docker start. It can do create admin users. It can do anything. It can run bin Magento. So the only one I'm going to run at this point is Mage Titans setup all. And then we'll come back in about 5 minutes, and hopefully we'll have something to demo, or I'll regret it. So yeah, why? So when I started looking for a Docker stack that could work in an agency, there's lots of options out there. Clearly there's some that have got a really good hold in the market. But what I wanted was a single set of Docker containers, kind of a shared hosting environment that could run all my projects. So if I'm running 10 different projects, I have a single set of Docker containers with PHP and Nginx, et cetera, et cetera. I also wanted some sort of centralized storage of the databases and configuration so that all my team were using the same thing. Too many questions about it's not configured that way on my computer, I'm using the wrong version of PHP, etc. And it needed to be maintainable. I don't want to be that single source of knowledge and kind of information. I want the DevOps team to be able to maintain it. So it uses Docker, Docker Compose. It uses Bash. It doesn't use PHP that a DevOps person might not know. And the developers want to be self-sufficient, but they don't necessarily want to know all the DevOps type things. So I limit the amount of knowledge that's needed there. But some people really, really do want to know all the details. So nothing's hidden. Nothing's in precompiled binaries, precompiled Docker containers. It's all there. It's all readable. So the things it gives you, consistency. All the Dockers come on. The developers come on. It takes kind of 5 minutes. They're up and running. They've got the database. They've not had to trace down some DevOps guy for a latest database backup from production. They've all got the same version of PHP, the same modules installed, the same configuration in Magento. Just gives you that real consistency. Speed, you've just seen, hopefully. It's a one-line thing. You don't have to kind of answer any questions unless you need to. It does support multiple database backups, so you might get asked which version of the database do you want to use, but that would be all. And the helper scripts limit the required knowledge. So if I'm starting on a new project, I need to know which version of MySQL to use, which version of PHP to use. All the scripts are readable. You can go in and say, OK, it's PHP 8, and it uses MySQL 8. And teamwork, which is kind of the more important thing for me. Everybody's using the same stack. It's not some people using the Mark Schuss stack. It's not some people using LAMP or WAMP or XAMPP or whatever else. Everybody uses this stack. So if somebody gets stuck, somebody will understand it. Somebody can help somebody else. And then the fixes and the improvements that come out the back of that process are all stored centrally in Git. And so it constantly evolves, constantly becomes better. Included in the stack is everything you would expect for running Magento, including email catcher so that you don't send nasty emails to customers. RabbitMQ's in there as well. But on top of that, there's a few extra bonus features. So I've wrote recently an integration which puts the profiles, Magento's basic default profiles, into Elastic APM, so that's included in here. Lighthouse Server, which I don't know if anybody's come across that, but it's pretty good. I'll show that later as well if I have time. And PHP Storm Server and VS Code Server. So if you want to, you can run this fully remotely on a VM, not have a £2,000 laptop. You could have a £10 a month VPS, and you could start Magento development. And then anything else that you want. It does support project-specific Docker Compose files as well. How does it work? So everything is cloned from the main repo, and then the project scripts download the code bases from either Bitbucket, custom VPS, anything else could be supported. The shared configuration is either in the Docker Stack repository itself in your fork of it, or in AWS S3, which is what we use. There's no pre-compiled images except for the core PHP images, etc., the Nginx images. So that means that everything is editable. You can go in, you can say, actually, my version of PHP needs this specific module for my use case. You can install it. You don't have to ask DevOps to go away and build it, put a new image in Docker, pull it down. You can just do it yourself. The negative of that is it takes a little bit longer. It takes about 15 minutes, which I figured was a fair trade-off, to be honest. I said it was optimized. So the main optimization I've done around the connections between things. Usually they connect in networks. So there's the overhead of network connections, making sure a connection closes, etc. So PHP to Redis and Nginx to PHP connect on sockets. So it's a file system socket which is shared between the containers. When I benchmarked Redis earlier in the week, it's about 200% faster if you use a socket versus using the network. PHP OP cache has got the right sensible settings for Magento, so it's not constantly flushing files. And Nginx has been optimized to give you like production Lighthouse scores, which we've heard about already in this talk. And for Apple Mac, historically it's got a bit of an issue with the file system. So I've got Mutagen in there, which if you're running a small number of projects, about 3 or 4 projects, is totally fine. After that, Mutagen itself starts to struggle. So what you can do, optionally, is completely disable file synchronization so that the files only exist inside Docker, and then you can use the VS Code server, PHP Storm server, to edit those files internally to the stack. So that's much quicker again. This will be really, really quick. The actual structure of this is bin. So bin contains some wrapper scripts, some utility scripts. Docker has all the information, all the resources which is needed for building the Docker containers. Project is the same for the actual project, so there's some include scripts, the resources such as database backups for the sample projects, and then the project scripts themselves. And then there's a source folder, which is where if you don't turn off file synchronization, your projects are cloned to there, so you can then use your native IDE, what you're normally used to. And then let's see if my demo has actually worked. It's still installing, what a shock. So I do have a plan B. He says. So I just open another window. So I've got this thing called Docker Stack UI, which is just a basic UI I started recently. And I'll just do the same thing. Docker start, he says. So hopefully we should have something now, which we do. So you can see it says I've got PHP in my admin, which I could click on, it will take me to it. Also, it shows me the containers that are running, so you've got the different versions of PHP, MySQL, everything which is supported. And hopefully it was almost done. Good. And you can also see that the titans.lock server is there, and this is where we find out if it actually worked. Wow. A production live demo that works. Hooray. It's more fun if they don't, for you guys at least, anyway. But you can see the performance is totally acceptable for a development stack. I can add to cart. I can go through to the checkout if I want to. And you saw that I actually built that, so that's not a pre-warmed cache. It's not anything kind of hidden in the background. I can go to the admin. It created an admin user as part of the install, so I can just log in as the admin user. Tell Adobe I don't want them to listen. And then refresh. So even the admin, which can be a bit slow in demonstration stacks, in development stacks, is usable. You can click through, you can do what you need to do. So hopefully you can see that that's going to be a useful speed if you are developing against Magento. So that's titles.lock. On top of that, I mentioned Cabana. So this is the Magento profiles that you're used to seeing, the standard basic ones that say the cache front end started here, it did a database query here, and this is running on every single query of the site and putting it into Elasticsearch. So I can go in and say, actually, my store is on full page cache, why is it making a database query? And the answer is, even on full page cache, it's still querying about the stores, the store groups, so it can read from the cache. So you can start to optimize your Magento that way. So that's the back-end optimization. I mentioned Lighthouse server. So we've got, again, everybody's familiar with Lighthouse. You usually run it from your browser. You forget to store the PDF of the Lighthouse score. Somebody comes to you at the end of the project and says what were the scores after sprint 2, and you've forgotten. So with this, you can kind of have it set up locally. If you are optimizing your site, you can run Lighthouse consistently. You can see I've done 3 runs of this. You get pretty graphs of the performance score of Luma. And the reasons why it's failing certain tasks, and et cetera, et cetera. And then I can click in, and I can pair this run of Lighthouse with a previous run, which I did 2 sprints ago, and find out the reason that it's slower is because maybe you turned off robots text or something. And that's for the home page, a category page, and a PDP. And it's for desktop and mobile. And again, that is scripted, so you can just go, okay, I want to run bin Lighthouse collect titans.lock. And there's some JavaScript in the back end, or some JSON in the back end that configures how it runs, which pages it queries. And away it goes and it'll do its thing. And it was mentioned before that it's kind of all preset in Lighthouse in your browser. If you have a different use case, you want a different connection speed, taking the timer, you can change it. So you can say, actually, I want a faster internet connection, a slower internet connection, I want different resolutions. And then I mentioned about the PDF. So on each run, you can go in, you say, actually, in my previous one, I want to view the report, or in this version, I want to view the report. And the full Lighthouse report is there with its screenshots, with everything. So it's quite a nice little tool in its own right. Let's go back to here. Actually, I will do one. While I've got a bit more time, I'll kind of go through one bit more. So you see the commands that it can run are things like cache clean, indexing, kind of the normal tasks that if you didn't have these helper scripts, you'd have to log into Docker, or you'd run them locally, or you'd do something that makes it a bit more complicated. So I could just do projects, bin Magento, or I did bin Magento maybe then, Mage Titans, cache flush, and it will log into the Docker container in the right version of PHP. It will connect up and it'll do its own thing. Everything in the bash scripts, again, bash can kind of look a bit horrible, be a bit daunting. Hopefully you can see this screen and read it. Essentially all you end up with is a string of readable commands that anybody could understand. So you've got a repository clone, it gets the database, it loads the database, it runs composer install, config apply. You can go in and say, actually, I also want to install sample data. So your devs can go in and do things. And then if you want to start a new project, all the variables are at the top of the script. So here, maybe it's not big enough, I don't know. Maybe not. You can see that it's saying it's running PHP 8.1, it's using MySQL 8, and it's using the 245 branch. So if I wanted to run 246, I could just change the branch, do the setup install again, and have a working version of 246. And that's the end of the live demo. So how is it on slower hardware? Take a picture of this and try and crash that server if you want to, I don't mind. This is a £10 a month VPS, running that stack, running open source Magento. The admin's there, you can poke around, do what you want. It's a 4-core processor, it's 8 gigs of RAM, it's got an NVMe hard drive, cost me less than £10 a month. So if you didn't want a £2,000 MacBook, a £2,000 Windows machine, but you can afford £10 a month, you've still got a route into developing and full control over your own stack. Why? Yeah, it's already been done, clearly. There's lots of solutions to this problem. It's not a new one. maybe you consider this solution if you need full ownership of your development stack. So you've got some secure data, you can't just trust something compiled away in a binary. Maybe you've got some bespoke edge case requirement. You need the 10-core version of the processor with 60 gigabytes of RAM and 400 gigabytes for your database. That's going to cost you £30 a month. It's still much less than similar solutions. And that's the end of my talk. So it's all available in GitHub. Have a go if you want to. Feedback, suggestions, code contributions, more than welcome. My contact details are there. And thanks for listening, and thanks to Mage Titans for the opportunity to speak.